fighter has the highest fight IQ?
I don't think there's nobody in the game that has the fight IQ that I have.
Off the charts.
His fucking IQ.
The highest fight IQ maybe ever.
This guy hits hard. He's tough. He's this, he's that. And this guy has a dream. But my fight IQ will win this fight.
All right, we got UFC Fight Night, Magny versus Prates coming up. If you guys have watched our previous videos, you know we're big fans of the Fighting Nerds. Kind of a big reason why we started this channel and called it Fight IQ, because we really like to glaze those dudes, but for good reason. They all have great fight IQ. They all have slightly different styles. They're all fun to watch. So, needless to say, excited for Carlos Prates to be back this weekend. And I personally think a Neil Magny matchup is really good for him, not just in the sense that it's a name to beat, so he'll be in a few more conversations after he hopefully beats Magny, but I also do think it's a good matchup for him to kind of show out his skills.
This is a good opportunity for Prates to just get a highlight reel over a really big name that fraud checks a lot of upcoming prospects. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a perfect opportunity for him to become that next big star at welterweight. That's going to be a fun matchup for anybody.
Yeah, and I'm kind of happy that Magny got that win over Mike Malott, because it kind of re-legitimized, because you know what I mean? He is that guy that it's like, oh, all right, let's see if you're ready. We'll put you up against Magny and see what happens. And he was losing to prospects, and then kind of regained value in that name of his by beating Mike Malott. So very happy that he was able to do that. But now we got a much harder matchup for him here in Carlos Prates, much more versed on the feet. Where do you see his biggest advantages here against Magny?
I think Prates is going to have quite a few tools to choose from against Magny. I really think his boxing defense is some of the best in the game. What Prates does that a lot of other fighters do not do, which I think they should kind of learn from, is having multiple looks on the feet. So when Prates fights, he fights from a few different stances, and he has weapons and attacks from all of them, and he's really defensively sound from all of them. So he can fight very traditional Muay Thai, where his back leg is straight, front leg is real loose to, block kicks and stuff, palms out or long guard. And then he can also fight from the Philly shell for really boxing heavy fighters. He used that against Trevin Giles and Li Jing Liang as well.
Yeah.
So his defense from these different stances that he has is very sound, and he has so many different attacks and looks to kind of probe and find out what's working for each opponent, or, what he needs to do to adjust to a fight.
Yeah, not to mention his physical attributes too. I mean, he's for his fighting style, his stature is perfect. He's tall, he's lanky, but he's not super skinny. He's got some muscle on him, and clearly he has power. So one thing that Neil Magny likes to do to a lot of his opponents is pressure them up against the fence. In the past fights that you've seen of Prates, how does he fare in the fence defense?
So usually Prates is very good at staying off the fence and making people pay for engaging in that sort of clinch work. I couldn't find what his exact kickboxing record was, but he lived in Muay Thai or in Thailand for 6 years and fought Muay Thai fights. Yeah. He says he has over 100 Muay Thai fights. So his clinch game is definitely not something to be underestimated. His best weapons, I think, are his knee from the backside. He has a really good flying knee as well. And from open stance, he's a problem for anybody. And if you want to really see what open stance is capable of for people that are fighting with their lead legs closer together, Prates is a really good person to watch, because it really capitalizes on really strong attacks from the rear side and devastating knockout power from the right hand or left hand. Yeah. And left knee as well.
Yeah, what I was saying that I like about Prates, you mentioned a little bit about it before, how he can kind of adapt his style to whatever his opponent's doing. He doesn't just come out and the Philly shell. He doesn't just come out and a traditional Muay Thai stance. he has all of these in his bag and really can bring them out whenever necessary. Saw it against Li Jinliang. Once he had him hurt, he switched right to goblin mode, which is something that we are very fond of. Hands down,
we love goblin.
Hands down low, out to the side, wide stance. Sometimes
lots of head movement.
Yeah, the goblin stance can change, from fighter to fighter, but he really does like a really wide stance. When he knows he has an opponent hurt, you see he really settles into that stance and really tries to put the pressure on once he knows he has a guy hurt.
I want to make a comparison between fight IQ of Prates and somebody like Yuri Prohaska. So Yuri Prohaska has another very wide stance, kind of fights palms down, hands down as well. Against Rakic and Alex Pereira, they were attacking that lead leg because that's where a lot of your weight is when you're fighting like that. And Yuri just decided to not do shit about it and just eat those kicks. He really has no answer for that attack against his lead leg. And he just essentially forces his style. Prates, on the other hand, when he fought Trevin Giles came out and he was really attacking that lead leg because Prates came out in goblin stance, wanting to have that wide base. And since Giles was attacking that lead leg, he made the adjustment to go straight Muay Thai stance. And you can see it's very, very pronounced. But that's when he had all of his success, was because he completely nullified what Trevin Giles' game plan was just by switching his stance and just taking those looks away. And you would be surprised how, nobody does that. People don't make those type of adjustments in real time. Like, I can think of so many examples where there's a very obvious hole that in somebody's game that a fighter makes a read on, and they never make the adjustment to close that hole. And
yeah, you see a lot of guys. You see a lot of guys, if they're in open stance and say they're southpaw, they're getting hit a lot in that front leg. You'll see them try to switch back to closed stance. But like you're saying, not a lot of guys really have the ability to say, I'm just going to change my fighting style completely. Yeah, at the high level, it's something that's extremely useful. And, for people thinking that Carlos Prates is just a kickboxer or just a Muay Thai guy, any stance you can adopt on the feet, he's good at. Specifically in the Li Jinliang fight, because he's a very different matchup than Magny, and being as that was his last fight, where do you see him taking his success from that fight and being able to use it against Magny?
I think it's going to be a combination of shutting down what Magny's going to try and do offensively on the feet and kind of just picking from his bag. So let's say Magny is going to come out and he traditionally likes to box with people, long straight punches until he gets them against the cage. Prates is going to have an answer for it. He's really good as far as head movement and counters as well. So I feel like where he's really going to shine is he's going to outkick Magny. And the knees, I think, are Prates' strongest weapon. If you look at all of his knockout finishes before the UFC, and he got one in the UFC, lots of knees to the body, flying knees to the head, KOs, and it's very impressive to see. So his shot selection is some of the best that we're going to see in the welterweight division.
I'm very excited to see him. Those knees are going to be a huge advantage. We know that Magny likes to get close and clinch up, and when you're in that clinch with Prates, those knees are going to be very available for him. Another thing is it's widely known that Magny doesn't check leg kicks. Do you see Prates using leg kicks a lot in his game, or is it mainly him using his boxing and his knees to keep that distance that he likes?
Prates is really good at using leg kicks. In that fight in the Contender Series, specifically, he used leg kicks because I want to say he was in closed stance for that fight. So him and his opponent are very traditional, where it was like their stances are closed and that rear leg kick is available for him. He will use it if it's there. And it's a very significant strike for him. He also uses head kicks as well. And one thing I want to mention too is when he's in that traditional Muay Thai stance, he likes to bounce that lead leg. And not only does that help you chamber up power in your hips, but it hides the kick as well. So when he goes in that traditional Muay Thai stance and he's like bouncing that lead leg, that's going to help him not telegraph that switch kick as much that he likes to throw to the head and to the body.
Yeah.
And it's really good at catching people off guard.
Yeah. So the next thing is I'm just going to keep talking about where he has opportunities against Magny, because Magny does, he uses his boxing to close the distance, but if I'm being honest, his boxing is not very clean. He doesn't necessarily like double punch, but like when he walks in, he kind of does that thing where he's walking and simultaneously punching. And I think with the left hand of Prates, I think he's going to be extremely open to a counter when he's trying to close that distance. I really do think it's going to be very dangerous for Magny trying to get to that clinch distance up against the cage and hopefully take him down, because we know that's going to be his game plan. He's not going to be able to survive if he just stands and strikes with Prates. I could see because Magny, when he comes in, he tries to do it in this way that's fast, but it's kind of like a barrage of punches to get you distracted so he can grab a hold of you. It's not really like where we see in guys like Ilia Topuria, where like he has great boxing and he closes the distance with his boxing, and if the takedown is there, he takes advantage of it. Magny is not that type of dude. It's clear what he's trying to do. He's the one who's trying to close that void. He's trying to get rid of that distance and grab you. He's not a guy that has great boxing and then takes advantage of the clinch situations and takedowns when they're there. So personally, like as far as can you hear Luke barking?
A little bit.
As far as a game plan strategy for Prates goes, I think it's going to be rather easy to formulate a game plan for Magny. It's pretty predictable.
There, you really only have like one method of victory for Magny, and it is utilizing his grappling and trying to see what Prates' grappling looks like. He has been smudge grappled to decision before, so that would, if you're Magny, that's what you want to do. The thing that it's going to be tough for him to close the distance with is once Prates, he doesn't close his eyes. He doesn't really flinch when he sees punches coming, and he's very comfortable in the fight. So his eyes are open the whole time. He's not going to be one of those people that's like panicking to seeing strikes and then he gets in on his hips. He's very aware because he's looking for counters when people are striking with him, and he's in the pocket. And another thing too is his footwork and how he pivots to get angles on opponents is going to be a real problem if you're trying to just march him down, Yeah,
his angles are great. It's when I watch his counter left hand, which he hit on Li Jinliang right before the finishing sequence, he had the absolute perfect angle. And it's not like something that you see with like a TJ Dillashaw where he's cutting a hard angle to get behind your shoulder. He just is worried about touching your chin. And if he creates just enough of an angle to have the perfect angle on your chin. It's not this big movement. Like if you really slow down Prates' counter shots, he's just barely moving out of the way and just barely cutting the perfect angle. I keep replaying this over in my head. I can see Magny charging forward, trying to fluster Prates with shots to distract him, and Prates just seeing everything and just cutting that angle and just left hand right on the chin. I'm practically dreaming about it. I can see it in my head.
Yeah, man. And I think a good fight to watch to kind of show that would be Trevin Giles. The Trevin Giles fight, it was his first performance in the UFC. When he was doing his blitzes and all that, Trevin Giles was actually a pretty good boxer. I know he notoriously gets KO'd, but it's because he's willing to get in there and exchange into boxing, and his boxing is not the worst.
Yeah.
So when he was trying to attack Protes, he was having so much trouble because he kept changing up his defense. At first, he was using the Philly shell and really covering his chin with his shoulders, which he loves to do and is really good at, rolling it off his shoulders, strikes. And then when he would blitz in, he started using, both forearms to guard and when he was looking for the counters. And then ultimately, after he landed that big knee, Trevin Giles, he was not anticipating any other strikes, and he just came in with 2 punches, boom, boom,
Yeah,
straight down the middle.
The speed too is something to talk about because Prates is very quick. He gets to the target very very fast. Now I brought up the top 15 here in welterweight. Magny is sitting right on the end there at number 15. What do we see for Prates after a win like this? Because welterweight is a very stacked division. Even in the bottom half of the top 15. Yeah, I don't know if you want to bring it up real quick, but even in the bottom half of the top 15, we got guys like Gilbert Burns, Joaquin Buckley, who just got matched up with Ian Gary, Jeff Neal coming off of a win. I think, when I think about how Prates matches up against the rest of the division, I think he matches up great because it's not up until the top 5 where you start to see these really, really strong grapplers. All his way up to the top 5, he's going to have favorable matchups because these are mostly strikers. Magny, Luque. I mean, Luque's got great jiu-jitsu, but his takedown game isn't the strongest we've ever seen. MVP, Michael Morales, Stephen Thompson, Jeff Neal, Joaquin Buckley, these are all strikers.
Yeah.
So personally for me, I see a great future for Prates in this welterweight division just on currently how he matches up against the top 15.
Oh, 100%, man. And when you even look at it even closer, you're looking at who's having the most success in that division right now. It's all boxing-heavy wrestlers. And in Jack Della Maddalena's case, he's not even really that much of a wrestler, but he's just using his boxing really well. Yeah. So not only does he have favorable matchups, but he has exciting matchups. Like how does JDM's boxing match up with Prates' boxing defense, his kickboxing, that's something I want to find out.
Yeah.
I think after this fight, if he gets through Magny, you give him somebody like Gilbert Burns. I think Gilbert Burns would be a good, because he's going to engage in the striking, but he's primarily going to want to grapple because that's where his strengths are. So he can kind of or even like a Colby Covington, he's going to have to, show out against somebody, and that's somebody that's going to be on like a 9 or 10 fight win streak is going to be on fire, so.
Yeah, right. It's like, we know that, seemingly Colby Covington just ducked Gary pretty hard. Mm-hmm. Gary was like
really, really hard.
Yeah, Gary was like, you know what? Colby clearly doesn't want to fight me. I'm fighting Joaquin Buckley. And Joaquin Buckley, another guy who's predominantly a striker, but can handle himself on the ground too. And it's kind of like a lot of these guys in the welterweight division. I would love to see the Gilbert Burns test if he beats Magny here.
Yeah.
Personally, I do think that's a great matchup. Gilbert Burns has kind of been dropping in the rankings as of late. Prates working his way up. Man, this is just part of what makes the fighting nerds so exciting. Is that you could pretty much toss any name next to theirs on a card, and it's going to be an exciting fight. It kind of doesn't matter who they're fighting.
Yeah, I can think of Jeff Neal being fucking gas.
Jeff Neal would be a great fight.
Fucking gas,
Yeah.
The MVP fight might be like a weird one because of that blitzing style, really big shots coming in at once. Yeah. Prates does get hit. I know we're kind of glazing him a little bit, but that doesn't mean he's not taking shots, but he's a tough dude. He hasn't been really wobbled or anything like that in UFC or that I've seen.
Man, I'm definitely excited. He originally was supposed to fight
Randy Brown
on the John Jones Stipe card. I guess Randy had to pull out for some reason, and the UFC thinks very highly of Prates. So they're like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do main event in the Apex. I think it's going to be in the Apex. But I think that speaks to his skill level, his experience going back to his kickboxing career and his Muay Thai career. I think he's a hot prospect to look out for in the welterweight division. Welterweight is about as exciting as it's ever been. It's never been the most exciting division, but right now I think it's a great time for Prates to be where he's at, because it can really, really highlight how good he is and how technical he is on the feet with all the great strikers that are currently in the welterweight division. Yeah, like I said, I do think it's going to be a rather easy matchup for him here against Magny. Hopefully we get the show-out performance that we're looking for. And then, yeah, a Jeff Neal matchup or a Gilbert Burns matchup after that would be super, super fun.
100%.
Yeah.
I think Prates he's vying for that like superstar Brazilian role that they might need right now. Right now he's in his prime. He fights like he puts on highlight reel performances. He can speak English.
Yeah.
He does this weird thing with his hands that Anderson Silva used to do when he's in exchanges too, where he's like, doing this kind of number.
Yeah.
And it's you love to see it, man. Anderson Silva too got me into fighting.
Yeah, I've seen some videos out there, or at least one or two, comparing him to Anderson Silva, and he is just like, Anderson Silva had a certain level of confidence in there that eventually was his downfall. I like that Prates has that confidence, but is definitely a bit more reserved than Anderson was.
Yeah. Very calculated.
Yeah. Any other points on this matchup or on Prates in general before we say peace?
No, man, I think we've kind of covered everything. I really think that this is a very entertaining fighter to be fighting at welterweight right now.
Yeah.
I think he's my favorite of all of the fight nerds currently. After watching, a lot of his fights over the weekends, I just love how he strikes. I love how he makes adjustments mid-fight. And it's really refreshing to see the striking bar being pushed forward a little bit, because, it's things like this that are going to make other fighters be like, oh, this guy's really good from open stance doing this. He's using all of his, all these different looks mid-fight and making adjustments. Like, when TJ was coming up, he really kind of got the ball rolling on, hey, we should be switching stances and, really trying to experiment more with striking, because it gets boring after a while. Everybody just keeps doing the same shit.
Yeah.
So the fighting nerds and what they're doing is just keeping things exciting and fresh and new, but at the same time, just an evolution of the striking game. It's fucking beautiful to see, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more thing on the fighting nerds, just to glaze them a little bit more, is like they definitely have this exciting fight style, but when you actually break it down, they are very, very technical in what they're doing, which is no different for Prates here. So on that note, we might try to get a full card prediction video done. If not, this is really the most important matchup on the card. So glad we got to get this one in. Enjoy the fight, guys. Adios.